Wonderful. And we are.
Let me just say, I'm listening, I'm in, but I'm gonna hide myself because I'm in the middle of something else also. In the meantime, Savannah, you keep moving forward and I'll come back in. Thank you.
All right. So good evening, everyone. Welcome to the board meeting for December the 8th. As I said before, we outreach to several members just to ensure that we're going to have quorum and just a smooth transition for tonight's meeting. With that being said, it seems that everyone who has confirmed for the meeting is on the line. So I am going to, well, first, just to go through the agenda for the meeting tonight, we're going to do the acceptance for the minutes for November the 4th. Then we have a resolution on hand from Mitchell-Lama United on protecting and preserving the Mitchell-Lama program. And then we're going to follow that by a presentation by Microgrid Network on constructing and operating resilience and renewable energy storage for building in New York City. All right. So our first two items will require to vote from our members. And with that being said, let me get Karen up. Karen, are you there?
Yes.
Okay. I'm gonna have Karen just call the roll.
Okay. Is Michelle on right now?
Yes, Michelle is on.
Hold on for 1 second, I'm sorry.
You're looking for Michelle. Michelle?
Yes.
Michelle? Hi.
Yes.
Oh, would you, since you have your list in front of you?
No, I don't. I'm taking the notes as taking attendance as we call.
Okay, not a problem. So I will just go ahead and.
Oh, I actually have a list. I'm sorry, I have the list. Hold on.
Okay.
I'll start. So, Councilmember Barron.
Joy should be on. She confirmed, and I see her.
I see her too.
Here
okay.
as well.
Councilmember Cornegie.
I'm sorry, this is Joy Simmons. I couldn't find my screen. The mute button was on. Okay.
That's okay. Thank you.
Joy Simmons from Councilmember Barron's office here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Cornegie.
Ian?
Oh, yes. That's Ian Fullerton from Councilmember Cornegie's office here.
Thank you.
Hi.
Yeah. Councilmember Cumbo. Councilmember Deutsch.
Pause for a moment.
I'm sorry.
As we go to the roll call, you are allowed to unmute yourself to state that you're present. I'm also monitoring the chat.
Okay. I saw someone put something in the chat for Councilmember Deutsch.
Yes.
Okay. Councilmember Eugene. Councilmember Brannon. Councilmember Yeager. Councilmember Lander. Councilmember Levin. Councilmember Mizell.
Jonathan, I am going to unmute Jonathan. Jonathan, Alan is on for myself. On mute. Okay, Jonathan?
Yes, I'm here.
Present, okay.
Ampry Samuel.
Present.
Thank you. Councilmember Menchaca.
Yes, present. This is Ching from Councilmember Menchaca's office.
Thank you. Councilmember Reynoso. Councilmember Traeger. And Councilmember Lewis.
Present.
Thank you. Community Board 1. Community Board 1. I see Ms. Fuller, yeah. Community Board 2. Community Board 3.
Here.
Community Board 4.
Present.
Community Board 5.
Present.
Community Board 6. Community Board 7. Community Board 8. Sorry, who is if you're not speaking right now, can you put yourself on mute? Thank you. I'm sorry, Community Board 8 again.
Ethel Ty is present.
Thank you. Community Board 9.
Fred Baptiste, present.
Thank you. Community Board 10. Community Board 11.
Community Board 10, Lori.
Oh, Willis. Lori, are you there?
She's unmuted. Yeah. Okay.
Community Board 11. Community Board 12. Community Board 13.
Here, Jeff Sanoff representing Community Board 13.
Thank you. Community Board 14.
Gail Smith, present.
Thank you. Community Board 15.
Teresa Scavo, present.
Community Board 16.
Present, Janice Morgan.
Thank you. Community Board 17.
Joan Bachardine, present.
And Community Board 18.
Okay, Karen, let me jump in. I got a text message from CB4. Chairman Camacho, he said that he's on, but you had him as absent. I asked him to sign in on the chat, but I don't know if he knows how. But CB4, Camacho was on.
Yeah, I see him here, his phone.
Okay, I wasn't sure.
Okay. And in addition to CB4, is anyone on from Community Board 12 who also RSVP for the meeting? Okay. And is anyone on, I think, yeah.
I'm going to contact CB12 now because I don't understand that. That's Yudel and what's his manager's name, please?
Oh, Barry.
Thank you.
Once again, is anyone on from CB12? Please unmute yourself.
Or sign in the chat.
Okay. And regarding council members, is anyone here from council member Lori Campbell?
I'll contact them also.
Okay, but could we have the numbers in the meantime, Michelle? Because we should. On the board president. Wonderful. So with that being said, we can move on to our first agenda item.
Okay, so we have quorum. I thank everybody who participated, who gave their word, the people who called us and asked us to move the meeting up earlier. I'm happy that we accommodated you, and I'm happy that everybody kept their word. Thank you.
Wonderful. With that being said, we are going to move to the first agenda item, which is the minutes from November the 4th, right? Minutes for Borough Board, November the 4th. was sent prior to the meeting. I do apologize, I had technical difficulties, so it didn't go out the day before as normally, but it was sent out today. Copies of the minutes were sent to all members. Do we have any corrections for the minutes for November the 4th? You could put it in the chat. You could unmute yourselves from the members. And I'll give it a few seconds while I monitor the chat. Or you can mute yourself if you have any corrections to the minutes. Okay.
Motion to approve the minutes.
Okay.
Teresa Scavo seconds that motion.
Yeah. So it has been moved and second to adopt the minutes from November the 4th. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion has passed. Okay, wonderful. So tonight, our second agenda item is a vote on the resolution for Mitchell-Lama United on protecting and preserving Mitchell-Lama. As you guys can recall, in September, September the 9th, Mitchell-Lama United came to present at Borough Board, and they spoke about when to come back to get a vote on a resolution. Let me take this off. So at this time, we have a representative who has a copy of the draft resolution that she'd like to present to the board. After she presents to the board, we could open the floor up for discussion before we take a vote on the item. So with that being said, Adeline Needleman from Mitchell-Lama United. Please note, we also have Aaron Burst, who's in our policy team from the Office of Brooklyn Borough Hall. He also oversees the Mitchell-Lama Task Force. He's here on the line too as well. So with that being said, Adeline, I am gonna yield the floor to you. Please introduce yourself, state your name again, and you could go through the resolution and just a brief reminder from September's meeting, okay?
Thank you. Thank you very much. I hope you can hear me clearly. My name is Adele Needleman. I am a member of Mitchell-Lama United, which is a coalition of 3 volunteer grassroots groups which work to preserve and protect Mitchell-Lama cooperatives and Mitchell-Lama rental units. I am currently the president of Cooperators United for Mitchell-Lama. And I do live in a Mitchell-Lama development in Manhattan. And the resolution, I am so pleased and honored to read this tonight. I've been working on this for about 15, 20 years in my own cooperative. So this is very dear to me. Whereas the city of New York has been experiencing an affordability crisis for many years due to rising costs of housing, healthcare, and other essential services. And whereas the pressure of these rising costs reduces savings and forces New Yorkers out of the city. And whereas housing costs in particular have trended upward for many New Yorkers, and whereas the COVID-19 outbreak has exacerbated the affordability crisis through economic turmoil and job losses, which in turn increased the vulnerability of New Yorkers to stay in their homes. And whereas one of the best solutions for affordable housing compared to other options is the Mitchell-Lama program for cooperatives and rental units, due to structural characteristics that provide low, moderate, and middle-income New Yorkers collectively an opportunity to live comfortably without adverse housing cost effects. And whereas, despite its affordability, Mitchell-Lama housing is threatened by privatization and semi-privatization, which is a Article 2 to Article 11 conversion efforts that result in undeserved windfall profits to current owners, while depriving other citizens and taxpayers the opportunity to access this affordable housing resource, along with additional hardships resulting from current COVID-19 emergency. And whereas no new Mitchell-Lama projects have been developed for over 35 years, and whereas the Brooklyn Borough Board recognizes the critical importance of the Mitchell-Lama program in providing affordable housing to New York City's moderate and middle-income workforce. And now, therefore, be it resolved that the Brooklyn Borough Board supports legislation pending in Albany to limit to the maximum extent possible the privatization and semi-privatization of Mitchell-Lama developments. And it is further resolved that the Brooklyn Borough Board demands a complete suspension of all privatization and semi-privatization processes until the COVID-19 pandemic is over. And it is further resolved that the Brooklyn Borough Board prioritizes the development of new Mitchell-Lama development to the greatest extent possible. Thank you. Thank you. And if you have any questions, I'd gladly try to answer them.
So at this time, the resolution is asking to support legislation pending in Albany to limit the maximum extent possible of privatization and semi-privatization of Mitchell-Lama development. Is demanding a complete suspension of privatization and semi-privatization process until COVID-19 pandemic is over, and is prioritizing the development of new Mitchell-Lama to the greater extent possible. So that is the overview of that particular resolution, which was sent out earlier. Are there any questions? I'd like to open it up to the board for any discussions, questions.
Hi, good evening. Good evening, everyone. This is Joan Bacardine, Community Board 17. In reviewing the resolution, thank you for, first of all, thank you for preparing the resolution. But as I reviewed the resolution, I did note that in a few locations, and semi-privatization is duplicated. Is that intentional or by accident?
I believe that's a typographical error, ma'am.
Okay. Because that would be the only thing that would prevent me from proceeding with the resolution for that clarity. So thank you for that.
Okay. Right. So on line number 6 for the semi-privatization, that would be the second, I guess will be removed. Joan, is it on line 6?
I apologize, I muted myself.
No
yes,
problem.
there is 3 different times. So let me tell you exactly when. So 1, 2, 3, 4. The 6th paragraph, yes. It's in the 9th paragraph and the 10th paragraph.
Okay.
So in the 6th, whereas, and then in the 1st and 3rd, resolved that.
In the 1st and 3rd resolved.
1st and 2nd resolved.
Okay.
Yeah.
Amend. Okay. And please, the second. Okay. So the 1st resolved, the 2nd, and line 6.
Line 6 in the whereas, yes.
Okay. Okay. Any other comments, questions regarding the resolution or regarding this item? The edits being added.
I have a question. Ms. Niederman, thank you also for preparing the resolution. Could you tell us approximately how many units are Mitchell-Lama rentals and how many are Mitchell-Lama co-ops?
I'm not 100% certain. I don't have that statistic in front of me, but I know only 10% of the Mitchell-Lama cooperatives, fewer than 10%, have left the program, and more than half of the Mitchell-Lama rentals have left the program.
And that question is from Community Board 3. Okay.
And if you unmute Miss Andrea Rudner, she might have the specific numbers.
I'm sorry, I didn't give my name. Richard Flatto, Community Board 3.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah.
And Ingrid, if you, Andrea, she might have the specific numbers in front of her.
It says,
Okay, that's Sarana. Sarana, you need to change the name so they know it's you and not me.
Oh, thank you, Sarana.
You're
I'm
welcome.
sorry. Yeah.
no problem, thank you. Andrea? Unmute, you're on, let me see, you're not muted. We're unable to hear you.
Ms. Rudder, may I recommend that you take yourself off of video for just a moment? That will free up some of your resources and enable you to speak.
Okay, and we also have some questions in the chat. I do see hand raised. Hands, sorry. Hello. So while she is, okay, so while we try to handle that technical issue until we get her online, I think, let me try one more time to see.
Hi.
Andrea?
Yes, can you hear me now?
I think we can hear you now.
Okay,
Yeah, go ahead.
terrific. No, at the start, there were about 69,000 units each, and over half of the rental. But as it was,
You're out again.
He's breaking up.
Right. I think I can continue. Most of the cooperative units have remained in the program. Fewer than 10% of those cooperative units have left the program. 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 or 5 actual cooperative developments have left the program. So the overwhelming majority of cooperative units have remained. Unfortunately for the rentals, it was not up to a vote of the people that live there. It was simply the decision of the landlord. One person got to make that decision, and the numbers were decimated in the rentals. And we contend at Mitchell-Lama United and also at Cooperators United that the option to leave the program was blatantly added in at the very beginning to sweeten it for the developers. And it had nothing to do with the original intention of the program. We have found that in those developments where privatization has been removed from the discussion, they focus on their needs, they focus on the important decisions, and they don't focus on the few people who might profit down the road in the future when they leave the program and leave New York City and no longer are citizens of New York.
Okay.
So, okay.
Community board, it was 16. And you have a question?
I think my hand was up when I was trying to.
Oh, not a problem. Community board 14, Gail?
Yes, just a couple questions because you were the presenters were breaking in and out. Do you know what the total number of units are, and also if at some point you can provide us with the information in reference to the breakdowns of the rentals versus the co-op units as the previous board member had asked?
I would say there are about 60,000 cooperative units remaining in the Mitchell-Lama program. And in Brooklyn, you have some very, very large, some of the largest developments. You have Warbass out in the Coney Island area, I believe, more than 16,000 units, and that is a 1,600 units rather, and that's a state supervised development. You have Lindsay Park, which is in the Williamsburg section of Brooklyn, also very large, and that's supervised by HPD. So we figure there's at least 60,000 units. I can't forward more specific numbers because at least on the cooperative developments. But we're looking forward to trying to convince and to get protection to prevent any privatization. That's the key thing that we're trying to do. So one of the bills in the state legislature is raising the bar, meaning raising the percentage of the vote. So right now we are you need to get a 2/3 vote in order to privatize. We want to raise that to 80%. So to go from 66 to 80% of the dwelling units in order to successfully privatize. And privatization costs the development a fair amount of money. So some developments have spent more than $2 million in order to privatize and yet have not been successful. So it's just throwing money into the garbage, into the trash, throwing it towards a variety of appraisers and lawyers, and it's not getting anywhere. So it's running around in circles.
Thank you. Any other questions? And as a reminder, following September's meeting, there are a number of supporting documents that were sent out to the board members regarding, I believe, probably a breakdown of Mitchell-Lama across the district. So any other questions? I don't see any other questions in the chat. I don't see, I'm looking for anybody hands.
I do. Joan Bacardine again from Community Board. I was not chairperson at that moment, so I just have one final question. Are you using Mitchell-Lama as a reference point for NYCHA? I mean, I'm trying to understand when you say Mitchell-Lama exactly what sort of, because there is, for example, there is Glenwood Housing in just right outside of Community Board 17, and it is a NYCHA development. So, but as I'm doing my quick research here, it doesn't immediately jump out and say Mitchell-Lama. So I'm trying to understand, what do you frame as a Mitchell-Lama development?
A Mitchell-Lama development was based upon, in the 1950s, a state senator and a state assemblyman, one a Democrat, one a Republican. One was named Mitchell and one was named Lama. And they developed this concept of housing for middle income people. Today we use the word workforce people. It's based upon what would be affordable for, at that time, teachers, social workers, firemen, policemen, sanitation people, and to provide and to keep them in the city at that time in the 50s and the 60s. And in certain neighborhoods, they built very tall multifamily homes. And the cooperatives, in that time in the 60s, you could buy in maybe for $5,000, $4,000. Some of my friends whose family bought in, the family pooled their money on the table. And they saw what they had available so that at least some families could begin moving in. I've lived in Mitchell-Lama myself since 1970. So it's housing which is considered for middle income people. And when my income went up and my husband and I were both working and we had 2 children at home, we didn't pay a surcharge. When our income went up, we paid a surcharge. Many Mitchell-Lamas have many people that have left NYCHA because their income went up and they could afford to move into something bigger or nicer, or where they had some equity. So we do have equity. When we leave Mitchell-Lama, my apartment is sold. My shares in the development are sold back to the development, to the corporation. So basically, I get back what I put in, a little bit extra for if there were any assessments, a little bit extra for amortization. I do not profit. So Mitchell-Lama is a not-for-profit development, and it accommodates people. In my neighborhood, people have been living in this building since they moved in. We're having some extra turnover lately because some of our neighbors are passing away, they're dying, and their apartments are now available. So we've been a very strong stabilizing force in our neighborhood. Maybe at that time, nobody said those words then. We could have been accused of being the gentrifiers. Not anymore. And, okay, is that enough background?
So I'm sorry. So I'm versed on Mitchell-Lama. I was trying to understand when you said Mitchell-Lama for this resolution, what you were referring to. So it's helpful. Ms. Rudner, please go ahead and share that spreadsheet. It will be helpful for me to identify when we're considering Mitchell-Lama, which of our NYCHA developments have the Mitchell-Lama program within it?
No, there is no relationship between Mitchell-Lama and NYCHA.
Yes.
You just said NYCHA.
No, if I could just cut in, they are
please
actually referring to the housing.
Identify yourself. Oh, go ahead.
I'm a member of the Brooklyn Borough President's Office. Thanks,
yes, sir. Please go ahead.
How are you all doing? Great to see you all here. The housing that they are actually trying to refer to with these resolutions is basically the housing that was created under the 1955 Mitchell-Lama Act. That was a very specific bill that created this very specific type of housing, right? Considered basically middle-class housing. Actually, NYCHA is a completely different system. It's actually New York City public housing is actually what NYCHA is. NYCHA is under totally different auspices. It's a kind of a quasi authority, which is shared by the city, the state, and the federal government, right? Whereas the Mitchell-Lama housing is actually created by the state and is under the purview of the state. So it's a completely different system.
Thank you for qualifying that. Okay, that helps.
No problem.
Yeah. And there's another question in the chat from Community Board, I believe, in Luna Park Housing in Coney Island. They wonder if that's a Mitchell-Lama development.
Yes, it is. Luna Park is a Mitchell-Lama development. It is supervised by the city, by HPD. Mitchell-Lama developments can be either supervised by HPD, the city, or by the state under HCR. Luna Park is HPD.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for that. He said thank you. Any additional questions? I am checking in the chat. Someone has a hand raised.
Hi, yes, this is Janice Morgan from Community Board 16. I have a question with regards to if the Mitchell-Lama team has, I guess, considered or utilized this movement around community land trust as a reason for why Mitchell-Lama should remain affordable. It seems that while there's been this this push and this mass exodus of units from the Mitchell-Lama program, there's also this push from HPD to, I guess, educate and create community land trust. It seems like the two are the idea behind the two is the same. So why would on one end, there be support for removing Mitchell-Lama affordability, but then you're teaching or telling these new developers to put the properties into community land trust? So I don't know if there's been any conversation, if you guys have explored that conversation, been able to use that as a defense for maintaining the program, but it just seems, that it could potentially be utilized. I mean, I personally have concerns about community land trust and how they will protect affordability into the far-reaching future, the 30, 40, 50 years later. And I see the problem with Mitchell-Lama protection expiring being a similar situation with community land trusts in the future. So if you have not considered that in support of your work to maintain affordability, I would suggest that you look at that.
I thank you for the suggestion. I do appreciate that, extra idea and that facet. But I would say that there has not been a mass exodus of cooperative units from the Mitchell-Lama program. That has only happened, unfortunately, on the rental side. Because the landlord that controlled in a rental building, there's a landlord, be it an individual or be it a corporation, it is still a landlord who gets to make that decision. And they do not consult the renters. We do have in some of the legislation that has been proposed a point that in a rental development, the people, the residents of the rentals be given the opportunity of forming a Mitchell-Lama cooperative so that they not be put out into the fair market, free market, the exorbitant market, going from a controlled rent to the free market is a terrible, terrible dose of reality and financial stress to individual families, and not taking into consideration where they were living and under what conditions. And they're moving from where a controlled rent of maybe 20 to 30% of their income to a huge amount on their income and a huge stress. Community land trusts is a possibility for the development of future Mitchell-Lama cooperatives. And we use Mitchell-Lama as a way of determining and instructing that we want not-for-profit housing. We don't want to put up something like some of the HDFCs where affordability might be defined as 30 to 40% of their income or even higher. To us, that's not affordable. So that's the whole point of in September when our members presented a slideshow and a history and a description of how Mitchell-Lama cooperatives work. And that's the basis upon which this resolution is been developed. Thank you. Any more questions?
Yes, I have a question. This is Lori Willis of Community Board 10. I just have a question about the resolution itself. Maybe I missed the word. I was unclear on the wording, but did you say that it's asking for the expansion of Mitchell-Lama, or just to continue what's in existence and to change the provisions about exiting from it?
At some point, our last goal, and we feel that it is a good goal, and because our developments have been successful, is an expansion of Mitchell-Lama. Not just the current protection, but the expansion. We feel that this is for young people, people with families, single people, small families, large families. There's no place else in the city for a comparable program where the rents would be, where the maintenance would be less than 30% of their income. And many of our children are walking away from the city saying they can't live here anymore. It just won't work.
So when you say, I mean, I can't say I know a great amount about this, but I thought that when you say expansion, wouldn't that go back to when wasn't the initial properties taken by eminent domain and then eventually given to developers and then to private owners? So that wouldn't that involve eminent domain of existing properties?
I believe that's in the history, but I don't think that anybody is proposing that today. They are looking possibly, if there's some of the, there are so many things going on in our lives these days in terms of real estate and housing, all of the vacant hotels, office space, and maybe using community land trust as a vehicle to pull this together. But we are urging that our elected officials and our housing professionals consider this structure going forward, because every Mitchell-Lama, you've won the lottery if you're on a waiting list and your number comes up and you can move in and apply. And it has been a very successful method of housing for middle income, not middle class. We're talking middle income people and families. So that's why we're asking that it be added to legislation.
My question was really toward with regard to expansion, what are you proposing be added to the legislation? Are you asking them just to investigate it, or are you asking that basically more properties be acquired? And the only way I know that happened was by eminent domain. So that's just my only question. I guess, do you have a roadmap is my question.
I think I can't talk about eminent domain. I don't think I can't imagine that happening these days. And the places that it's been used has been particularly rough. The only place I know of recently is in my neighborhood around Columbia University, and that was a particularly rough. I can't even say if it was good or bad, but they certainly were a dominant force coming through. But I don't think that is not the purpose here. The purpose is to encourage as I said, our housing professionals to consider it.
Thank you for that. And any other questions from members? Any other questions?
Yes, I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I have a question. This is Joy Simmons from Councilmember Barron's office. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, yes.
Yes,
So,
we can hear you.
well, first, I just wanted to remark with regard to the community land trust. In the city council, we have a community land trust initiative, and we also often, meet with developers who want to develop, land. And what we found is that while HPD talks a good talk with regard to the community land trust, they have not walked the walk. So they talk about, they're supportive of community land trust, but have not provided the support and made the land accessible and provided a supportive infrastructure for community land trust. So I think it seems like something political that they can say, the city or the mayor, oh yeah, we support it, but in actuality, it really hasn't been supported at all. And then because the community land trusts are really few and far between. And then I also wanted to just ask a question. So there are some Mitchell-Lamas that are rental and some that are cooperative, correct? Like, for example, there's the Mitchell-Lama in Queens, for example, Rochdale Village. I know that is a cooperative.
Yes.
And it's similar to what you described in terms of, having some kind of equity or something like that. And then Starlight City in our district, it's just rental. There is no cooperative aspect. So can you explain why are some are just rental and some cooperative, and can residents say that they want to be cooperative if that's what they want?
We would like legislation and regulations to allow rental developments to facilitate their conversion to cooperative developments. I think it's happened in one or two places where the rentals were in trouble because they were, I'll use the vernacular, they were flipped once or twice. One landlord bought them and then another landlord bought them. they leveraged any money in them, out of them, and the residents, the tenants, were just left there waving in the breeze with no protection. And then the city finally, HPD finally had to step in because these developments were in a lot of hot water. And I can't even say I know the names, but I know there was the one in Staten Island. There was a one rental in Staten Island had some particularly difficult times. And they, I believe, have been made into a cooperative. The addition of rentals goes back to the very, very early history of the Mitchell-Lama development. And they brought about the rentals because they needed somehow to sweeten the pot for the developers. Personally, I think we just need to find developers in the not-for-profit vein that are willing to work on it, to receive compensation, but they don't have to have huge profits to work on it.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
All right, board members, any other questions regarding this item?
Yes, Richard Flato, Community Board 3. Ms. Niederman, could you go over the income bands for Mitchell-Lama housing?
No, I can't. I don't have that in front of me. I'm sorry.
Excuse me, let me just jump in for a minute. Richard, I don't want to be funny. We want to vote on the resolution. The questions about income bands and all of that kind of stuff at the end, if you want to meet with, if you want to get Niederman's or whoever her associates is, contact information so they can answer those questions. We're happy to have those questions answered because I don't think that the income bands, no offense to your question, is going to matter in terms of the vote for the resolution. And if at another time the community board would like to have someone come in and explain the difference between Mitchell-Lama and NYCHA, we're happy to do that at a future meeting, but we've been like an hour on this. So I'm not trying to be funny, but if you need like more information, we're happy to provide you with it, but we need to try to move on, please.
Ingrid, I would like to make a motion to approve the resolution with those corrections that were made about the typos. It's Teresa Scavo, Community Board 15.
Gail
Yeah,
Smith.
Joan Bacardine seconds it.
Fred Baptiste.
Okay, wait. Gail Smith, Savannah. Gail Smith, Savannah says she seconded it. Okay, Savannah, take the movement for the vote.
Yeah. So let's see. So it was moved by Teresa Scavo from CB 15 and second by Gail to adopt a resolution supporting Mitchell-Lama United and preserving Mitchell-Lama program regarding the following: supporting legislation pending in Albany to maximize, extend, and possibly the possible privatization and semi-privatization of Mitchell-Lama development, demanding a complete suspension of all privatization or semi-privatization during the COVID-19 pandemic, and prioritizing the new development of Mitchell-Lama to a greater, to its greatest extent possible. So on that, I am going to call the roll for a vote for the members. Let me just get the sheet. We're going to start off with community boards. At this time, we will ask you, as we go down the list, to unmute yourselves. Let's vote. Community Board 1?
Yes.
Okay. Community Board 2 is not present. Community Board 3?
Yes.
Community Board 4? Okay. Thank you. Michelle, please also follow along with me too as well. Community Board 5?
Yes.
Thank you. Community Board 6? Okay. Community Board 7?
Yes.
Community Board 8?
Abstain, Ethel Tias.
Thank you. Community Board 9?
Yes.
Community Board 10?
Yes.
Community Board 11. Community Board 12.
Yes.
Community Board 13.
Yes.
Community Board 14.
Yes.
Community Board 15.
Yes.
Community Board 16.
Yes.
Community Board 17.
Yes.
Community Board 18. Okay. All right. I'm going to move on to council members. Michelle, are you tallying too as well?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Councilmember Levin. Councilmember Reynoso. Councilmember Cumbo. Okay. Councilmember Cornegie, that's on mute.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Menchaca, you on mute?
Yes.
Councilmember Lander, Councilmember Eugene, Councilmember Amper Samuel.
Yes.
Councilmember Barron.
Yes.
Sorry. Thank you. Councilmember Brennan. Councilmember Yeager. Councilmember Lewis. Christina. Unmute yourself, Christina. Councilmember Farrah Lewis. Yeah, Christina. Okay. Let me see. She was definitely on.
Yes, she was.
Okay. Okay. Councilmember Mizell. Mizell,
Yes.
that's a yes?
Yes, that's a yes.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Treyger. Councilmember Deutsch.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Hi, Councilmember Lewis votes yes.
Thank you. One, two, okay. So we're just going to go through the tally. Just bear with us while we. Yeah. 1, 2.
I voted yes too, Samantha.
And BP 8.
22.
Thank you.
Okay.
22.
Thanks,
22.
Michelle.
And we have, okay. So the motion carries with one, I believe, one exemption from, correct? Yes? Wonderful. So the resolution, the board resolution supporting Mitchell-Lama programming, preserving and protecting Mitchell-Lama has passed. With that being said, that concludes our business. A copy of the finalized resolution is going to go to our legal team just to edit, and then we'll send a copy out to the board. And just as a reminder, the resolution was also made on a support letter that was sent out from council members too as well, supporting some of these initiatives that are stated in the resolution. So we'd like to thank our panelists from Mitchell-Lama United and from the Mitchell-Lama Task Force for presenting tonight. And I'll close out our business with this resolution passing. Thank you guys. Great questions. Thank you for being very engaged in this. And we'll follow up with the documentations from September 2 as well for those members who did not receive it to take it back to their board. That concludes our business with Mitchell-Lama United. Now we'll move on to our fourth item on the agenda. So tonight we have a presentation by Microgrid Network, all right, on constructing and operating resilience and renewable energy storage for building in New York City. So representatives from Microgrid are here tonight and will share and be able to take questions from the board members. So with that being said, I'd like you guys to welcome the CEO of Microgrid Network, Monty Brenneman, and his colleague who will also introduce himself. Let me see. Tim Dumbleton, the COO of Microgrid Network. So hold on. So we will get Monty.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I
Ingrid,
can.
hello there.
Let me see. Let me get you.
Yeah, I'm the one who, I'm sharing. So
Change your name title?
no, it's Tim Duffy presenting.
And Monty Bannerman.
Monty's going to be talking first, and I'm going to be talking second. But
wonderful. Thank you for joining us. And let me just get him up.
Yeah.
Tim. And the floor is all yours. I'll just have you introduce your name and title to the board and begin your presentation.
Sure,
can you allow me to share, because I have a presentation to push to the. I'm still great at it.
Okay, and while Tim's preparing that, I'll introduce myself. My name is Monty Bannerman. I'm the CEO of Microgrid Networks. And I want to thank you all for this opportunity to introduce ourselves properly to this board this evening. I think you'll find that many people in your community know us, but I'm going to just give you a brief background on our company, and then I'm going to turn it over to Tim to talk about what we're doing in your community. So, Tim, if you could move to the second slide, please.
Sure.
Give you a bit of background on our company. So I'm just going to summarize what's on this slide. I'm not going to go through everything. I think the most important things I can communicate to you is that I've been fortunate enough to lead since the very earliest days of renewable energy in the Americas. A group of people have been called upon to advise and implement renewable energy with governments at the federal and state and provincial level throughout the Americas, with companies, with regulated utilities, and most importantly for us, with local communities. And our sole and primary focus is to help all of these entities understand, first of all, how renewable energy technologies, systems, and facilities and networks can be used to take direct action to prepare for and mitigate the risk of extreme weather events and extreme tidal events. We've been principally focused in those areas throughout our at this point, almost 14 years of doing this, on those areas that are most at risk in these markets. And so our driving forces as scientists and engineers by background, we have been believers in climate change for a long time. And at the same time, we have learned through this process how renewable energy can not only be a vehicle to take direct action to defend against these extreme weather and tidal events, but they can also be harnessed for the purposes of economic development, to deliver environmental benefits, and to deliver other benefits to everyone, every stakeholder in the community. And in our case, it's always focusing on the people that are going to be most in closest proximity to what we're doing here. So we help all these entities understand how to implement these technologies in a way that delivers the maximum amount of benefits across the greatest number of stakeholders. And we've been doing that for many years. Because our company was originally founded in New York City 14 years ago, but we've been working in other markets all this time, it became apparent to us that our greatest urgency really was about our home city. So for the past 3 years, we have not done anything in any other market. We're totally focused on our home market of New York City, because this is where we live. This is where our company is based. This is where our friends and our families and our colleagues are located. So for the past 3 years, we've been developing a very detailed strategy on how we can deliver all of these benefits into our city of New York. And we've been working with the Public Service Commission, with the state and local government leaders, and that's why we're here to introduce ourselves to you today. And most importantly, in the communities that we regard as most at risk from the extreme impacts of climate change. And so for our sake, we've been focusing mainly on the coastal communities along the canals and the riverfronts, those areas that are most at risk for flood, those areas that have been most impacted by the fossil plants that have been there. So we're talking about environmental and economic justice areas, because we know that that's where we can have the maximum impact through the use of leveraging these advanced technologies. We have demonstrated how we can deliver economic benefits to the community, how we can deliver direct investment into the community. We can create good local jobs. We can create competitiveness for the local business community by driving their electricity costs lower, and these are always very significant costs. And I guess importantly, we should also communicate that where we get our investors and the people that fund these renewable energy facilities that we're proposing to develop inside your own communities is from a sustainable equity fund that's charged with the responsibility to invest pension funds that in a socially and environmentally responsible way. So everything from our investors, pension funds, through to everything we're doing is hyper-focused on understanding how you drive renewable energy systems, facilities, and networks deep into local communities and make them not only something that's accepted, but something that is valued and attractive to the communities. That's down to every citizen in the community has to see a benefit from this. So what we've been doing is designing facilities that are designed specifically to be installed deep inside our most dense urban markets here in New York City, and to deliver the maximum benefits to these communities. We have a very large pipeline of these projects, and many of them located in your territory. And we have many of these advancing through permitting now that are going to come before your boards and your permitting authorities. We're planning on building the first of these beginning early in 2021, and we're here to introduce ourselves properly and to answer any questions that you may have, to make sure that you're fully aware of what we're doing and why we're doing it and what benefits we can deliver in our initiatives. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Tim to tell you a bit more about specifically what it is we're going to be developing inside your communities and how they can deliver benefits to the local stakeholders.
Thank you, Monty, and thank you guys everyone for your time. I want to explain to you what the problem is, because I think climate change is a problem, and then the situation of flooding and everything is going to get worse. But the truth of it is we already have a pretty big problem inside the electrical grid of New York City. And probably a lot of you have experienced it or well aware of it. In 2019, there were 2 major brownouts. In 2020, even with a lot of the reduction in load because of COVID, there were still an enormous number of blackouts. And a lot of the blackouts were also in kind of all the communities of Brooklyn. I think I don't know that I want to spend a lot of time, because I think you guys intimately understand that there's a real problem with the electrical grid in New York City. And the part of the problem is it's extremely old, and it's extremely at capacity. Everyone is using more power. We're all, using more devices, and we're turning on more lights and televisions. Not only that, but when cars start to become hooked to the electric grid, when heating is all hooked to the electric grid, and we stop using fossil fuels, it's going to put the strain even more. But this image on the screen right now shows you the current problem. This is an hour-by-hour use of electricity for the Water Street network, which is one of the networks in Brooklyn. And you can see that the lowest line is from 2018. And every year, the power is going higher and higher and higher. And this red line here that says network capacity, that's basically the size of the wires in the streets of Brooklyn that are showing that this network can't supply the amount of energy that's being demanded in the late afternoon, which is what this area above the line is. What our facilities do is they flatten this demand curve. They take this overage here and we move it into the middle of the night. So what we're doing is installing battery plants, and we need to install them in every little network all over the city, because otherwise the brownouts are going to continue and they're going to get worse. Because basically what we're doing is taking all of the electrical wires in the streets and making them more efficient. Okay. There's a lot of other benefits to doing the kind of thing that we're doing. Basically the power grid is going through the similar you know, back when we had just AT&T, and you had your phone and you picked it up and it worked. Now we have smartphones and everything is interactive. You send data as well as receive it. Electricity, the electricity markets and the electricity infrastructure in the city is going through exactly the same kind of shift. And that newer modern grid is going to be much more flexible, much more resilient. It will allow renewables to penetrate. And it's also going to make, honestly, we can get rid of peaker plants and a lot of things which makes, you know, which hurt specific neighborhoods where they're installed. This technology has to be installed everywhere. It has to be installed in tiny little facilities all over the place. I'm going to show you several of the facilities that we're planning to build, and you can see how there's a lot of different ways you can kind of shoehorn these batteries into local communities. This is a project we're doing right now. This is on Berry Street in Williamsburg. This is South 3rd and Berry. And this right here, just to give you an easy way, this area in the upper right, this is actually the on-ramp for the, or off-ramp for the Brooklyn Bridge, for Williamsburg Bridge, sorry. So this is this building is 315 Berry. It's a munitions factory. Is built in the 1920s. So it has a huge amount of capacity on the roof that is unutilized. Roof, you know, it had a big water tower, and there's also, you know, the floor used to hold 150 pounds a foot, and now people live there, so it only holds 40 pounds a foot. So what we're doing is we're installing on top of this roof a whole bunch of batteries and switchgear. This is taking an unused roof, and we're basically making it an energy storage service for this neighborhood. This does not benefit anybody in Manhattan, doesn't benefit anybody outside of this local network. It benefits only people in the Water Street network. This is a 3 megawatt, 4-hour facility. And what it does is it means that it makes it less likely that the power will go out in this particular network. And if and when the power does go out, it's actually able to help turn the power back on more quickly. So again, it's a bunch of boxes on the roof. They're very heavy boxes. It's basically like a bunch of Tesla batteries parked next to each other, right? If you could park them all up on the roof. This is another facility we're building. This is on the corner of Collier and McGinnis. This is a 2.4 megawatt facility, 4 hours. It's basically like a small little, it's on a very tiny little lot, 25 by 77. And we're building what is this, essentially a 2-story building on this. We have a bunch of transformers and switchgear on the ground floor, and we have on the top floor, we have a bunch of batteries. Again, it's basically like a 2-story, small, skinny little building. It's in a manufacturing zone. It's already kind of surrounded by a parking lot. This is a facility we're building down in the Gowanus neighborhood. This is on there's a Lowe's just a little north of here. This is the Lowe's. That's the BQE here, and then this is an old Pathmark supermarket, and then this is in the parking lot of the Pathmark supermarket. The Pathmark is currently shut, and there's a Build It Green in there, and there's a gym, and there's a rental for construction equipment. So we're renting from the landlord. We're renting this piece of the parking lot, and this particular parking lot is in the flood zone. So all of our facilities have to be above the flood zone. And so this is basically we're building a standardized platform, and then we have our batteries and our equipment on top of the platform. The underside of the platform can be used to charge electric cars. We're talking also with somebody who owns a food truck company, and they want to have, they have refrigeration in the food trucks, and they need to keep everything cold so they can plug their food trucks into our electrical grid. They're going to basically rent the parking spaces below us, park food trucks there, and then we have our facility up above. This is a much larger facility. This one is a 5 megawatt, 4-hour facility. So it's about, a little over twice the previous one we just saw. The last one I'm going to show you, which is the fourth type, which is a very simple ground mount. This one is not in Brooklyn. This one is in Queens. It's in Maspeth, just over the border. This is an 11,000 square foot lot next to an old Con Ed substation. We're renting out this open space here, and we're putting these basically batteries and switchgear. The batteries are in these 8 foot by 8 foot cubes. This is what they look like. And this is what these kind of rows here. This is basically each one of these is 1.4 megawatts, and then these are the different switch gears and transformers. So we're here just to show this to you. We want to build a whole lot of these things. We want to build 100 of these facilities all throughout the city in hopes of kind of modernizing the electrical grid. We've committed to every one of these things. If the power goes out in your neighborhood, this particular facility will have power. We want to provide amenity to the neighborhood. So we want to have on every one of our facilities, we'll have some plugs down at the street. And you basically can, if you want to charge your cell phone, you go plug your cell phone in, we'll have Wi-Fi that will continue to work because these facilities are resilient. So why is this good for a neighborhood? Why should you kind of want one of these in your neighborhood? Well, number one, it reduces the risk of brownouts, and it reduces the length of brownouts when they happen. So when the power goes out, you need a little spark to turn the electrical grid back on. And these facilities, by having energy in them, can become that spark. The second is they provide local power and internet during outages. So, you'll have a place to go and charge your phone if there's an outage for, a few hours and you want to call somebody and your phone is out of power, you can just walk down the street, plug it in and charge up and use the Wi-Fi there that will be available to the public when the power is out. The third thing is by having these spread throughout the city, we allow solar and wind to penetrate into the grid of New York City. One of the problems with solar and wind, of course, is it gets produced not necessarily when it's being consumed, but some other time. So it allows the city's grid to absorb and store and use energy when it's needed, but then also kind of charge up. It allows the penetration of these things and allows the city to use more and more of those things. The fourth thing is it reduces the grid reliance on expensive peaker plants. So the peakers that are all spread out the city, what happens is we have a demand for electricity in the middle of the day. They turn the peaker plant on, start spewing out fumes and everything. If you had a bunch of these batteries everywhere, you would charge them at night and you wouldn't have to use the peaker plants. And those peaker plants are very expensive. So if you want to get rid of peaker plants, you have to find a way to flatten that demand curve so there's no need to use them. And batteries essentially take the place of them. Batteries are silent. They don't pollute. They're much more distributed throughout the entire city. So it's not like one neighborhood has to have all the batteries in it. They have to be spread throughout the city. So it's much more equitable. Fourth thing is that we basically have a big backing from a big pension fund that is all about doing the right thing. And we're ready to go out and spend $10 million on each one of these facilities, putting batteries in. We've committed to providing local union jobs to build this, and we're ready to go. So we're here, most of these things are built as of right. The Berry Street one is in a residential district, so we have a BSA approval for that one. But the vast majority of them in districts, we have the funds and we're getting ready to go and build them. I think the reason we're here is we want to engage the community. We want everyone to understand what these things are. If you guys have sites where you think these things should go, if you have an empty lot or know someone has an empty lot that wants to build, that would want to build something like this, we're definitely wanting to talk to people. So we're a young company, we're a small company, but we're ambitious and we're out, trying to make connections with the community. Thank you.
I would like to add a couple of points, if I might, that we didn't get stressed. So all of these facilities have to go in on a piece of land or on top of a surface area on a roof or whatever. So one of the important things that we're going to deliver as benefits to the community is we of course these assets have very long lives and they're very financial because the utility essentially buys our power, and so anybody, whether it's a nonprofit or for-profit entity that has some spare space and would like to gain a long-term credit-worthy lease, we pay market rents for every square foot. We sign very, very valuable credit-worthy leases to anybody. So if you know of a nonprofit that could use a little extra revenue and has some open space that they might be willing to devote for a good cause, it's going to provide benefits to the community. We're very interested in placing these things where they can do the most good for the local community. So we're constantly looking for viable sites where we can put these in, where we can do some good. So these creditworthy rents are an important benefit that we provide to the community. We also engage very heavily with the local environmental and social organizations in the community to talk about how we can deliver jobs and other local benefits. So I guess the most important thing from our experiences, the most important thing is for us to communicate what we do to people like you, so that when you get questions from the community, you know where to go for the answers, as opposed to not knowing what's going on. And most importantly to us, you're the best channel we will ever have to the local community. We've been working for 3 years in these communities. We all live here, but as you know, you can live in one neighborhood, not know anybody in another neighborhood. So this introduction is very critically important to us, because it's leaders like you that are going to be probably receiving more questions about what we're doing than we will. So we appreciate the opportunity to introduce ourselves to you this evening, and would like to make ourselves available to any of you to answer any questions you have, or to examine an opportunity to do something together in the community.
Thank you very much, Tim and Monty, for your presentation. At this time, I'd like to open up the floor for questions. CB8, I know you got something in the chat. I can't pull up at the moment. Do you want to? You have a question? She has a question in the chat.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm just wondering how this project works with the current program from the state and the city offering tax credits to private homeowners who install solar energy panels on their roofs.
That's a great question. That's a great question.
I have a system and I'm looking for a battery backup. And recently, the Department of City Planning changed their restrictions. They will allow the battery backup on private home property within X number of feet of the building and the lot line. However, the fire department would have to approve the battery backup for installation. Does your company work with the fire department to get approvals?
Yes. So first of all, I'll start at the top. We've worked very long. We're in complete conformance, and a very key component of the state's renewable energy and their plans and their incentives, where we become certified with the state, with the Public Service Corporation, with the utility, and all the local authorities, and in particular with the Fire Department of New York and the Department of Buildings. And we also, in each of our facilities, where there's a surface area available, we incorporate solar. So we're very intensely familiar with both these programs. I should point out that our systems are very large in scale. They're typically, as you see, they have a large surface area. So we're not as directly involved in residential programs, but we have colleagues that do deal with both solar and batteries on residential premises. But you're absolutely correct. In fact, in our case, for our systems, for our larger systems like ours, there are very direct property tax benefits that accrue to the landowners who agree to host our properties if they're property taxpayers, just like there are tax incentives for residential users. But you're absolutely correct. There's a very rigorous process that these batteries have to go through to get the okay from the Fire Department of New York, and I will say that's the biggest one. And so there's not a lot of battery suppliers on the residential front that have gotten through that process, but there will be more. So, but if you do have questions on residential systems, we'll be happy to put you in touch with someone who deals with both solar and batteries on the residential front. But our systems are more designed to serve the utility network, not a local residential property, right? We're there to make sure the utility network is more resilient, and when the utility network goes down, because it will go down, to make sure that there's a large amount of power available to the broader community rather than just an individual resident.
Okay. Question, Anthony?
Thank you. Anthony Busworth, Community Board 3. First, I want to say thank you for your presentation and, providing us, a practical kind of solution on a way to think through the climate crisis. My question is basically two parts. First is, how are you considering or thinking about engaging environmental justice neighborhoods as you place your facilities around the city? And the other is, when it comes to, I appreciate the focus on local union jobs, but also, many of these same neighborhoods often folks do not get the jobs and careers in the renewable fields. I'm wondering, do you guys have any partnerships, or are you going to be working with nonprofits to engage local residents in particularly environmental justice neighborhoods so that they can gain exposure and have these career opportunities? Thanks.
That's also a very important and germane question. So obviously, just because we're driving union jobs doesn't mean we're necessarily creating jobs in the local community. So number one, we've been heavily engaged with for the environmental and the social and housing organizations, the social organizations in our targeted communities. And I will say our initial focus has been on Williamsburg and Greenpoint, and then south and north from there along the coast. So across the boundary of Newtown Creek into Long Island City, and then south towards Red Hook, and now we're spreading a little more east. So you'll find that in these communities we're already engaged. We're working with nonprofits on the idea of, these systems and technologies drive jobs, and they don't necessarily have to be union jobs. So there are good quality certification programs for entry-level jobs in both solar and in energy storage, where we could get involved with the local community organization to drive apprenticeships and training that would give people a gateway into our industry. And we're interested in that because there's not a lot of people who are specialists in what we do yet. So there are ways to drive local employment below the union level that can be very effective in terms of preparing people for retraining or young people for training for entry-level positions into these industries and technologies. And we're quite familiar with those because we've done this with many other nonprofit organizations in many other markets. So we do have ways we can work with these groups, and we're actually, that's one of the things we hope to do with our deeper engagement with the local government now, is to find out, okay, what other programs can we do here? But I will say, if you were to see all the places where we've targeted for site selection and acquisition, we have at this point over 25 sites already acquired. And as Tim says, we have an immediate goal to get up to 100. All of our sites are targeted. We'll be happy to show you where. They're all in these zones that are most impacted by fossil fuel plants and most at risk from climate damage, from extreme weather and tidal events. So I think you'll see that our strategy from the beginning has been to go directly into those neighborhoods most at risk and those that most have been affected negatively by past environmental practices. And I think you'll find that, well, we're there for a reason because we believe that we can drive these benefits, but we haven't got all the answers in how we can directly engage with this specific community on all these factors. But we are certainly ready, willing, and able to engage directly on answering these questions, because the most important thing to us, we feel a deep sense of urgency that we have to take action. We have to take action. We don't have any more time, and we can't afford to wait for any more foot dragging on these matters. And so we are deeply interested in finding out the way that we can increase adoption and acceptance and get the message across to everybody in the community why they should value and want one of these facilities in their community. We don't believe there should be any reason for NIMBY here, although we're obviously going to have to overcome that. But it's really critically important that we get engaged down to every level that we need to in the community to communicate this message. And that's why we regard these communications and introductions to people like you as the most important introductions we can make. So we are open to these discussions and prepared to give answers in a very specific way in specific areas based on the local conditions.
Yeah, well, I have a map on my computer right now showing all the social justice areas right around the peaker plants that are, experiencing all of the output from those peaker plants. It's not this is what we're targeting. That and districts that are where the network is really, really falling apart. Those two things are where we're looking.
This is about protection of life and property. And that goes to those areas that have been most impacted in the past are going to be the ones that are most impacted in the future. So that's where you'll find us every time. We're not in the nicer neighborhoods that are well above the flood zone. You're going to find us in the places that are most at risk.
Thank you. Any other questions from the members?
Joan has two questions.
Yes,
the first question is the second location 17. That you. Hi, sorry. Yes, Joan Bocardine, CB17. The first question is around that second location. near in the manufacturing zone on the corner of in Brooklyn. I didn't hear where that location was.
Collier and yeah.
This is a 243 Collier Street. This is if you see here, this is Collier Street here, and this is McGinnis Boulevard.
Thank you.
Can you see my cursor? Yeah. This is a retail strip mall here, and this is the parking lot for that. So there's one little piece of it's 25 foot wide. This back is 77 feet deep, and this is like 65 feet deep. It's a very strange little anomalous leftover lot that's used for parking.
We can fit these things into the smallest little nooks and crannies in the city, and we're in those neighborhoods that are most in need of support to the network from the first place. So you'll find that we have some developed. These are New York specific solutions. Nowhere else are you going to find these solutions because they've been designed to fit specifically into these specific communities and to fit in. Right.
It's very hard to find space. Building anything in New York is difficult, complicated, takes way too long. And it's hard to find any space. There's always 6 people that want to do something in any given square foot, right? So what we're trying to do is figure out ways of being creative to try to shoehorn these things into spaces that are, least desirable and making them desirable, because all these things do is just sit there and run.
Okay. And my final question is around health concerns. Should we be concerned about these random batteries showing up on our corner, on the tops of our roofs, down the block, around the corner? Have you heard of or been privy to any health issues as a result of these mechanisms?
If you have a phone in your pocket, it's the same technology. If you walk down the street and you see a Tesla and parked in a car garage, it's the same technology. If you have a laptop, it's the same technology. Any of you watching this as a laptop, you have the same battery in your laptop.
Except for 2 things. So that's a really great question, and it's very valid because everybody needs to be concerned about something new coming into their neighborhood and its impact on safety. So all those batteries that Tim just described, they all have the same fundamental technology except for one thing. Our batteries have very extraordinary safety measures employed in them, fire suppression systems and other things that make them far more safe than any of those other batteries you're talking about. So we have to go through in fact, in all of the Americas, the #1 most rigorous safety procedure in all of the Americas is the Fire Department of New York certification criteria for safety for these batteries. And so we are already among the most expert at understanding how to make sure that these things are absolutely the safest installations possible. And that's why you're going to see, I think, in your own board, this application for putting a battery on top of a sturdy residential structure, because in my own building here in New York, during that major power outage in Midtown Manhattan, I watched firefighters climb up 31 stories up the stairwell with a backboard and then carry a 300-pound man back down those stories to get him to the hospital. I think you all realize that there's very few buildings in the city of New York that were prepared for this number of power outages, and that people's lives are at risk because there isn't backup power in these buildings, and elevators won't run when the power goes out, and people's cell phones won't charge when the power goes out. And so in our view, we have to be safe enough to put these things above people's heads in residential buildings, and we're going through a very rigorous process right now to demonstrate that these are absolutely safe, and we have all the extraordinary protection systems in place to make sure that they remain safe.
Yeah, there's a control room, and they're all monitored in this control room.
7/24.
Yeah, 24/7. So it's.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I have a question. I'm sorry. Has there been any thought on Anthony Busworth, Community Board 3? Has there been any thought on placing the batteries on Anthony Busworth, Community Board 3?
Thank you.
Has there been any thought about placing these on the top of public school buildings?
Oh, actually, well, you just named something. So our first intuition was to go to schools, especially those schools that serve as emergency shelters, and to other government facilities that are deemed critical, and hospitals and those things. And of course, it's still in our plan. Unfortunately, we're in a bit of a hurry here to get these first ones in. So we would really love to get into that process, but of course, as you already know, if you're talking about, for instance, NYCHA is an obvious candidate. Schools, obvious candidate, but to get through the process, to get these permitted and approved, and we want to show these what these look like. So it is definitely part of our strategic plan to end up putting these into other municipal facilities. So we would love to put these in schools, and we have proposals out there for schools and other nonprofits, which also incorporate training programs in them. But as you probably know, it takes us a lot longer to get through that adoption cycle. And so those ones are going to come after the first ones, which are primarily going in on private lands and other properties that can readily sign a 20 to 40-year land lease without a long procurement process. But we will be getting to those critical facilities. We want to see them every place where power and or heat is needed in the event of an emergency. So that is definitely part of our plan, but we haven't crossed that threshold yet of getting through that adoption cycle. So any introductions or assistance you can help us make on that, because ultimately those facilities need these kind of resources. So we're intensely interested in anyone who can help us get through that, I'll call it that gauntlet, that approval gauntlet.
Thank you very much. Before, there's another question in the chat, but before we go to that, is there any other questions?
Yes. This is Joy Simmons from
Joy Simmons, and then okay, go ahead, Joy.
Can you clarify how the energy is generated?
So on solar, I think you already know the solar panels that we put up on our facilities will be generating energy from the sun, and those electrons will be stored in our batteries. And what we do is we actually charge these large scale batteries at nighttime with energy we get from Con Edison, but we can contract for that energy to come from a large scale solar or wind farm out, somewhere else in the state. So where the solar farm shows that they injected a megawatt of energy into Con Edison grid, and we pulled it off at night to charge our batteries. So we have the ability to ensure that our batteries are charged with renewable energy, and then when they inject energy back into the network when it's in need, we're supplying the network with renewable energy. So actually, every kilowatt hour of energy we inject back into Con Edison's grid, when they need it to increase their resiliency, it's credited as renewable energy. So we help Con Edison meet their renewable energy mandates that are imposed by the state, because
you're taking energy from Con Ed and then selling it back to them?
Yes. Yeah, well, you should think of Con Ed as the network that transmits the energy from one place to another. Con Ed doesn't generate energy, and they don't store energy. They transport energy. So if we were to secure contracts to purchase our energy from a solar energy plant in Poughkeepsie or outside of Poughkeepsie, they would send their electrons into Con Edison's network. Con Edison would be charged with responsibility of transporting those electrons to New York City, and we would then meter that energy as it's stored in our battery system. So we're acquiring renewable energy at nighttime when it's cheap, storing it and waiting till it's most in need during the peak energy hours typically during the afternoon and early evening hours. And then when the network gets stressed, Con Ed says, oh, we're getting worried that things are going to fall over here. We inject our energy back into the grid to increase the supply. So we're increasing the supply of clean energy to Con Edison's grid. And typically when they call for that, that means that they don't have to start up these expensive and dirty fossil fuel plants that are called peakers. So every kilowatt hour of energy we inject back into the grid avoids a kilowatt hour of energy that would be otherwise produced by these peaker plants during the peak hours of demand.
So in the spring and in the fall, when there's no major energy demand, there's nothing that is not doing anything. It's not like it's just
that's a good question
just in
too.
case.
Yeah, no, actually, so for Con Ed's purposes, their principal interest in our energy is during the 5 months where they're exposed to outages from heat. During the other 7 months of the year, we're free to sell our energy into the larger grid, our clean energy. So we can do the same thing, charge energy at night, and then sell it back into the wholesale markets that are run by the New York Independent System Operator. That's the operator of the larger state grid. So we're able to sell our energy in those non-peak months, back into the larger grid, the grid beyond New York City, for other markets that want to buy clean energy during the day.
Okay. And in the interest of time, we're going to try to bring this item to a close. Are there any final questions? Because
yes, Fred.
so Fred, any questions after Fred?
Yes, Richard Plateau.
Richard Plateau, and then Ethel, right?
Yes, I think most of my questions were answered, but I still have a concern that for private property owners, if they get batteries, they be able.
Okay, so let me have Fred go. Go ahead, Fred.
Okay.
Fred, then CB3, and then CB8.
Yeah, actually, my questions are related to that. And I thank you first of all, for the presentation. I think it's great work you're doing in terms of looking at renewable energy sources. But I did have the question in terms of, so if we're looking at basically moving these to neighborhoods, while we're moving away from some forms of pollution, I'm just concerned in terms of what is the impact on the environment in terms of if you have these large 1.4 megawatt or larger batteries, does it increase electromagnetic fields in the neighborhood? Are there other health and safety concerns in terms of, people should be watching out for? Are there certain places you shouldn't build because of that impact that it might have on the group?
That's a great question.
In terms of
Yeah, that's good. I'll deal with so basically we have to pass some very stringent rules to put in place by both the Department of Buildings and DEC and the FDNY about electromagnetic frequencies, about sound, about a vibration. These are solid state technologies. So and anything electronic is shielded. So we have to pass all those very stringent criteria to make sure that those concerns are addressed. So we can show the certification process that we have to go through for all those things. I think the most important concept for me to communicate is why these should be attractive to everybody. So what we're effectively doing, if you think about it, is we're moving energy supply on top of demand, so we don't have to transport electricity over long distances. We don't have to purchase our energy from big old dirty fossil fuel plants from somewhere else. And because we don't have to transport electrons for long distances, we make the existing network more capable of being efficient, and therefore we don't have to pay as ratepayers any more funds for Con Ed to rip up our streets to increase the size of the copper or to build the ugly old substations expanding into our neighborhood. So on almost every factor you can consider, this idea of distributed renewable energy technology is superior to the traditional technologies in terms of its safety, its environmental impacts, its economic benefits, its increase of competitiveness to the local businesses and residential users in terms of reducing their rates. And here's the one thing that goes to every citizen in New York City. Every kilowatt hour of energy we inject into the grid produces an environmental impact by cleaning up our air, because every kilowatt hour we inject directly displaces a kilowatt hour that's produced by fossil fuels. And that's really the core benefit that passes to everybody. And we will make ourselves available at any time to answer any of these questions to any of you folks, because as I said, it's better for us to give you the answers than to wait for them all to bubble up from thousands of people in the community. So we're happy to, at any point, to answer any of your questions in any of these regards.
Okay.
We'll make ourselves available.
Community Board 3?
Yes, Richard Plateau, Community Board 3. So thank you for your presentation. I had a few questions about some of the business terms. Could you tell us what is the type of footprint that you're looking for on roofs and land? Also, are there any zoning issues in terms of where these batteries can be sited? And last part is how long does it take to build a facility?
Tim, why don't you take those? Those are all right squarely in your court.
So let me take the zoning and the construction ones. This is not to be too wonky, but this is our facilities are normally use group 6C in zoning use group 6C, which is allowed as of right in all manufacturing, most commercial, and there's a special permit for residential. So we're currently in the BSA for 315 Berry Street, which is an R6. All the other facilities you saw are either an R12 or R11. M11 or M12. So, but it is allowed as of right, and it's essentially zoned as a substation. So it's the R6, or sorry, 6C, use group 6C is for substation. Some of the larger facilities would be 17C, which is also a kind of a utility use. These facilities are primarily, they are equipment that gets put onto the site. So construction should take between 3 to 4 months each. There's some construction in the street, which is bringing the electrical grid to the site. So essentially bringing the new service. We happen to have a much bigger pipe than most buildings. We have a kind of more redundant pipe. But essentially there's street work to bring the grid to the site. And then we basically build a foundation or dunnage, and then we place the equipment and hook it all up. So it really shouldn't take much more than 3 to 4 months to construct everything. The permitting would probably take a year before that, if not more. You know, and if it's a BSA, obviously you kind of would run that in parallel with the fire department and the Department of Buildings, which has the Department of OTCR, which is the kind of technical department of the Department of Buildings, which approves all of the technology of the batteries and the transformer switchgear.
And our footprint is, our smallest footprint is today 2,400
square feet. That the Callier Street site is 2,400 square feet. That's I don't think that's an ideal site for us. It's a little small. Our dream site is a site like this, which is about 8,000 square feet. Ground mount is our perfect size to do a 5 megawatt plant. 5 megawatts is the right size for us in terms of the different markets that we buy and sell power from. And we're competitive in terms of rents we pay. We're competitive with parking for a ground mount site. We're absolutely competitive for, when we go to neighborhoods, we can definitely pay market rate for open area. We're not competing with residential uses or commercial uses, but we can compete with, what would be a normal ground site with parking or, storage.
That's important. We do not. If I could just add one point, we are deliberately intending not to compete with residential or commercial use because we're not here to displace commercial opportunities or residential opportunities. So we're looking for open spaces that are marginal or underutilized or available for, they're not really as useful for anything else. So we're looking to find places where we're going to be not competing for other more valuable uses.
Also, I want to have one more comment if you don't mind. Mr. Batiste, talked about safety, and one of the things that should be clear is that our company we're trying to use the most modern and the most safe technology that we can buy. So there's a huge amount of advancement that's happening in battery storage. So as every year from now on going forward, our plan is to, it's going to take a long time for us to build all these plants. And we're always planning to install what will be the latest and the most sophisticated and the safest technology we can.
Thank you. And Community Board 8, and then we'll close out this item. I sent out this presentation earlier to everyone in the board, but would you like to put the contact in the chat, or how could people get more information? Should I go through Jess?
Yeah. I can put my email in the chat, and then folks with questions can
contact us at any time.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you.
I have a closing question for this panelist. Does microgrid support the private solar panel owners keeping their production, their solar production during the day instead of giving it to the grid?
Yes, well, actually, we can put you in connection with people who specialize in doing that via batteries, and we are strong supporters of renewable energy legislation, as you might imagine. We're intensely familiar with it. So if you just want to reach out to someone who's knowledgeable about these matters, the regulation, the market reforms, the rules and everything about solar energy storage, if we can't answer the question, we can definitely get you in touch with someone who can.
All right, appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So that concludes our business with Microgrid Network. We want to thank Tim and Monty for joining us tonight. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, Jesse, for setting this up. And please don't forget to just put your email in the chat in case you want to present at a different community board. So I will move on to, is there any unfinished business? Any new business? So,
Joanna,
yes.
I would like to motion that during the duration of COVID that we move our borough boards to 4 p.m. in the evening.
Okay. Thank you for that. Is there a second?
I second that motion. Julio Pena, Community Board 7.
Okay. All those in favor, just to recap, we've been remote. We're probably going to be remote starting in January too as well. And we have sent out, there's a motion on the floor, I know, and we did send out the schedule. That schedule was thick, but we're just looking at amending the time. So all those in, hold on one second. All those in favor of moving our regular board meeting? Aye. Okay.
Sorry, I have a question about protocol, because it seems like that you are in the midst of talking and then motions are being made. Is that appropriate for this committee or for this meeting?
I think she had called the motion and we kind of did the motion that was on the floor. And it's not a high, it's low hanging fruit, on this in regards to moving the meeting. And the deputy VP mentioned it ahead of the meeting when we started. So instead of going through a full road call on this one, I mean, if we could have an aye in regards to who's okay with moving the board meeting to 4.
I support it. Board 8.
Everyone's okay. Via
Community Board 17.
Okay. Is there 9? Okay. Now, is anyone opposed to moving the meeting to a 4 p.m. start time virtually?
Is it 4 p.m. or 4:30? I'm sorry.
Oh, correction. Thank you for amending that. To a 4 p.m.
4 p.m.
Okay.
Normally the first Tuesday of the month, granted, there's no holidays, granted, there's no conflict in scheduling. Nope. Okay. And anyone wants to extend from voting? No. With that said, the motion has moved, it has carried, and going forward, our board meeting will be meeting the first Tuesday of the month at 4 p.m. I do have another item that I just want to remind members is that the community board applications, right? This year deadline is going to be February the 12th, and it'll be up on the website very soon. The liaisons are going to send reminders to members who term expired, who are seeking to be reappointed, to make sure they get in their applications too as well, and anyone who's seeking to apply for community boards. And I'd like to also echo with the council members too as well. If you have, once you get the application, just to keep that in mind, that between December, January, and a little bit of February, for people to get their applications in. On another note, if anyone would like to submit nominations for the last COVID Hero Awards, we had 2. There's a link if you'd like to nominate someone. The deadline is this Friday. All right. With that being said, I would like to call a motion to adjourn the meeting tonight, the February the 8th. Hold on. Any other business? Sorry, guys. I apologize. No? Okay.
Joan Bacardine makes the motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Joan Bacardine and Teresa second. Oh, Fred was going. Thank you, guys. And we'll see everyone January the 5th.
Everyone have a very happy holiday.
Happy holidays.
Indeed. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.
Thank you.
Here. Yep.
Happy holidays, everyone.
Happy holidays, guys.
Yeah, Michelle. Hold on. I'm just trying to copy. the chat. Go ahead, Michelle. I'm here.
I just wanted to let you know, I'll send you what you call them tomorrow.
Thank you. Thank you.
And you know what it is? I don't know like all the names who people belong to. So I'm just gonna start sending like a list of the names and then do my sheets that I normally do. Okay?
Yeah. Okay.
Because I don't know like the names, like I'm not familiar with everybody yet.
No, I know that I know, but I knew it was gonna be because of the vote. Hold on one second.
No, but the vote I do have the accurate number. It was 22. It was 4.